Welcome to the Live Your Possible podcast, the show about sparking and discovering endless possibilities where we work, live, and play. A safe place where we can help you peel back the cover to what may be blocking you from being your most authentic and happiest self.
I welcome a former colleague from MassMutual, a significant contributor to Ignite Happy and my book, Live Your Possible, and my friend, Donna Skillman, to the show. Donna describes herself as a lover of life and a seeker of experiences. She defines herself not by titles or jobs, yet as a joyous and active participant in her life story. Donna is an avid nature explorer, butterfly gardener, and happiness champion. She loves any time spent in nature and considers the beach her happy place. Listen to Donna's story and her steps to stay lit with joyful hope and possibilities in the face of many dark and challenging moments. This episode is for anyone looking to find more joy in the world, feel worthy of opportunities, and begin believing you are possible, as Donna shared relevant ideas and stories throughout the show. Donna is also passionate about serving others in the world, and her greatest joy comes from spending lots of quality time with her husband, Greg, and her 3 cats. Donna Skillman, welcome to the show, Live Your Possible. It's been a while since we've seen each other. We used to work together at MassMutual. We're our colleagues, and we've been helping each other out along the last, 7 or 8 years together and seeing how we can actually spark possibilities and bring more joy out in the world. So I'm excited to have you on the show because I think there's so many people out there that are probably struggling in today's day and age, have had bad days and have had great days. And I think you're going to help us learn how to pull out of some of those dark days and how to keep joy and possibilities and love in the world. Keep it alive for all of us to keep moving forward each and every day. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. I've kind of waited for this day, I think, since the day we met, just because, our story has been so eventful in terms of the changes that I've had and then the ways that I've been able to kind of put some of those things into action. So it's been an action-packed journey that we've had. And I'm super excited to tell this story. And I'm super excited that if my story can help inspire anyone else to kind of rise above where they are, that would be the best thing I could do. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. That's awesome. I mean, you are one of the stars of the book, Live Your Possible, that I wrote, and you've edited and read a few times. So you certainly know the path of possibilities. I think you're the first one that took the path. So I know a lot about your past, and I really want the listeners to know a little bit more about you. And I'd like to go back in time a little bit because I know you are a big believer in connection, potentially even synchronicities, those type of things. And I remember this really cool story about where you met and how you met your husband, Greg. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Oh, I love that story. No, I'll always share that story. And he'll be very excited to hear it because he loves to tell that story too. Before I get into that a little bit, I'll say that, so I met him very young. So I met my husband, Greg, when I was 19. And at that point, I was in a very kind of transitional point in my life, which I guess a lot of people are at that age. But really for me, as I was kind of coming out of high school and kind of realizing that my high school persona wasn't who I wanted to be. It was just this, and this is kind of a theme, I think, of other times in my life where I was kind of playing a part of this person who was in all these extracurricular activities and just doing all of the things in high school. And when I was leaving high school, I really wanted to go somewhere where no one knew me. I want to kind of reestablish this identity of mine, this newfound, like, who am I? Who do I really want to be? What do I really want out of life? And through a series of events, I didn't end up going away to school, but those series of, at times, unfortunate events led me to Greg. And what is probably the biggest thing I can say about that is, had I not kind of purposefully gone down that journey of looking into myself and kind of pulling out those things that I really wanted to be, I wouldn't have been open to meeting him. And meeting him is obviously the kickoff of the happiest story of my life. And it's really just like a magical story. So I was going to college at Palm Beach State, which is a community college here. I was working full-time at Toys R Us. And then I was working in the evenings at a home for the elderly. So it was kind of a rehab facility for folks who are older or who had been through some sort of physical surgery, and they were rehabbing in this facility. And that was a really amazing journey too. I met a lot of older people who didn't get a lot of visitors, a lot of things. So that was just kind of a magical time in my life too, where I was just really in my zone and just kind of making these amazing connections. And so one night, very early on in the new school year, we had a tropical storm down here. So it was Tropical Storm Jerry on August 23rd of 1995. And I was at night, so I'd been to school all day, worked at Toys R Us, and then I was working in the evening. And I was flooded. I didn't drive at the time. None of my people could come get me. My mom couldn't come out and get me because all the roads were flooded. My buddy Steve couldn't come get me. I couldn't get home. I normally walked home, and I couldn't walk because it was pouring and the streets were flooded. So I called a cab. It was maybe the second time I'd ever called a cab in my life. But I really had no choice. And so I called them and I said, I'm in this situation. Can you please, send someone to come get me? Kind of waiting. And it's 8:30, 9 o'clock at night at this point. And I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And so I called back. And I was like, guys, I have no choice. I have to wait. Please tell me you're going to send somebody. And they said, no, we've got someone on the way. It's just taking a while. I said, okay, great. So I go out and there's this pink and white cab that drives up, and there's a guy kind of fumbling. So I'm getting soaked because he's pulled up to the door but hadn't unlocked it yet. So he'll probably kill me for telling this part of the story, but he's kind of fumbling to get the door unlocked. And I'm just sitting there getting drowned. But I get in the car and it's Greg. And so I just kind of see him, don't really see much of him because it's dark, and he's got his back to me and he's driving, but we had a really long ride home. What would have normally been about 5 minutes took almost an hour because of the flooding. I mean, waves literally kind of crashing over the hood of the cab. I mean, it was bad, super bad weather out. And he had on a local radio station at the time that was like an alternative music station. And because I am always fumbling for things to say because I don't know how to shut up, I was like, oh, I love the music you're listening to. I love this song, listen to that. So we started talking about music. And that pretty much fueled a really amazing chat for the next 45 minutes on the way home. And when he dropped me off at my house, he very uncharacteristically, for a cab driver, I think, I didn't know it at the time, but in subsequent cab experiences, I can tell you it's very uncharacteristic. He kind of repositioned the cab after I got out to make sure that the headlights were shining on the front door so I could see to unlock the door and get into the house. And I thought, wow, that was really kind. I went in the house and thought about him, but that was it. And I didn't get his name, didn't know anything about him. We just had this magical little chat. And 2 days later, I went back to the elderly home to go back to work. And there was one of those very stereotypical pink while you were out notes from the 90s. And it said, hey, this is Greg, your cab driver from the other night. I'm not a creep, and I'd love to talk to you, with his phone number.
I think it's this incredible connection. And I think sometimes when we have these chats with cab drivers or folks that are bringing us around in the world, there's some key messages there. And it sounds like you guys connected on many levels. One is obviously around music. And I know he's been going through some tough moments over the last few weeks. And I'm hopeful he'll be playing music for you again soon.
That's my hope too. I actually just bought a new sign that says live music, and I'm going to hang it going into the room to his office that we can live music to come.
Yeah, live music to come for many, many years. So keep getting well, Greg. Really inspired by what he's done. And we'll talk about that later or maybe another show. I got to say too, is like, I remember it was about 7 years ago, just a few days ago, where I think we connected actually in person in Boston, and you and your husband at the time were on vacation and you diverted a day. And I had asked for you to be on my team and wanted to connect with you to figure out a little bit about you and what you're looking to do. And I gotta learn a little bit more about what was going on, because I think there was a lot going on in your life at the time. I do remember you were kind of guns blazing, saying some things to me about how you really didn't like your job. And I was kind of on my own journey, as you probably recall, that I started to have my own awakening and started to do some coaching and self-help stuff. And you said something about you don't believe in the self-help nonsense type stuff too. So tell me a little bit more what was going on, because I think you had a lot of life events happening, I think, over the recent years. And at that point, you weren't really sure where you were headed yet. Excited to have you on the team because we were at Mass Mutual together at the time. But tell me what was going on.
I think back to that time and I was like, I really think like, wow, he really had some crazy patience to deal with me, because I was a hot mess at that time, both from a professional and a personal perspective. So that was just about 7 years ago now. And at work, it was just a mess, right? I had kind of been moved from manager to manager, didn't really have a leader, just had people who were kind of watching me, didn't really have an environment where I felt like I could thrive, had a lot of frustration, had a lot of just angst about my role and not really understanding where I fit in and not feeling like I was really supported in any way. And then personally, so a few years prior to that, my husband and I had been on a infertility journey for many years, for the majority of our marriage at that point. And a couple of years before that, we had learned that our last attempt was unsuccessful. So we kind of knew that about that time, I was in my late 30s. It probably wasn't going to be in the cards for us. So it was kind of having an acceptance of that, because what we didn't want was to spend the rest of our lives chasing something and missing out on the happiness that was here. Because if you've been through anything with infertility, it's grueling. 3 in vitros later, and we were unsuccessful. So that it was just a very emotional and trying time for us. So kind of coming out of that, having kind of the job stress be what it is. I had just turned 40. So maybe 8 months before you and I met, 6 or 8 months, I had just turned 40, which is kind of that, midlife, what does it all mean kind of time. And I really was kind of evaluating, is this what I want? Is this where I want to go? I mean, obviously with Greg, everything is amazing, but in other parts of my life, I just wasn't feeling fulfilled. And, the funny thing about that is, I think if you asked anyone around me, except maybe Greg, everyone would have said I was fine, even at work. Maybe I had my issues here or there, but I think anyone that knew me would have said, oh, she's one of the happiest people we know. Like, she's always so positive, and, she's always celebrating, and she's, inviting everybody in. And I was that person outwardly, but internally I was just a disaster. I was very unhappy. I was very, we'll probably talk more about my mom later, but at the time, my mom was in a very tumultuous state and had been my entire life. Like, I've spent most of my life worried about my mom, and I was in kind of a feverish pitch about that and where she was, and worried about her constantly and what her future was and what that future meant for me and all of these different things. Turning 40, like seeing what that all was about. And then, my oldest brother, unexpectedly passed away. And that really brought up a lot of kind of childhood trauma, a lot of feelings that I didn't expect, a lot of feelings that I didn't have that I would have expected to have, a lot of feelings that I was very surprised I was having. And it just all culminated in just this like ball of unhappiness and insecurity and just a really unhappy time. I come back from my brother's funeral. So actually it hadn't even happened yet. So he had passed away. I took some time off. I actually came back to work for a couple of days to just kind of get my mind off things. And in that time was when I got the news that my current manager at the time and my whole team had been laid off due to some changes, some org changes. And I was kind of the last one standing, and I just was done. I was like, I can't even handle the impact of this. I don't know where I'm going now. But at that moment, I felt like I just didn't have anything left in the tank. I just felt like I had given and just kind of let it all out. And so at work, I was maybe taking things out on work that were personal too. So I'll give it that for sure. But yeah, you definitely met me at the height of one of the lowest points of my life. And up until that point, I would say it was probably the lowest point of my life. The subsequent year that I've just had, which we'll talk about later, has actually kind of surpassed that now. So yeah, that's when you met me. So when you were like, hey, I want you on my team and I want us to do these great things, I was kind of like, yeah, I don't care. Like, I don't want any part of it. I don't want to know you. I don't want to like you. Like, I just want to move on. Like, I'm done and I want to move on. And now here we are.
Yeah, here we are. You've gone through so much, and it's quite amazing, to see where you've gone. I mean, I have to think that there are many listeners that have gone through elements of what you've gone through, that you went through in a period of a few years, that people have either dealt with or tried to cope with. And, I feel for you, especially on, all those fronts. And even recently, your recent events you'll talk about. I'm quite amazed about how you've kept it together. To your point about when we met, yeah, you were guns blazing, yet I think it's important to know that we all have a story. We all bring things that we just don't know where people are coming from. And I knew a little bit about what was going on at work. And I knew you were frustrated. I knew there were limitations that were put in front of you, barriers that were put in front of you. And at that point, why would you want to continue? And how could you trust anybody? How could you trust folks that were trying to give you a vision or a thought? And, that was something I know we talked about in Boston. I think there was actually a takeaway from that discussion. We were pretty open. I think that's really an important thing for listeners too, is like at that point in time, we were working together. We were very direct and open. I think quite authentic, especially where you were at the time and where I was at the time, trying to figure out what could be done and what we could do. And some of the things that were, I guess, frustrating at work, we were trying to solve, right? I think it's important that we were pretty direct. As much as some leaders don't want to hear some of those things, I think it's so important as human beings that we are willing to hear those things. And we did that. And I think one of the things you took away was the book called Speed of Trust, because I think I just finished that book. Mm-hmm. And I remember thinking about kind of my own part and maybe not giving everybody the full feeling of trust with me, or I lacked the level of trust. And I was kind of spinning a little bit about the book. I think that's why I shared it with you, because I felt like you were spinning on different fronts. And we talked about other ideas. And I think that's when you were telling me about the self-help stuff. And I just encourage you just to take one step or a small step and not think about it as this self-help thing. And I think a lot of people struggle with self-help. And as you know, as we've talked about in the past, it's, it is taking small steps, because it is about self-care. Because even externally, if we're not sharing our best self, internally, it's coming out. So if we could actually work on ourselves internally, and if we're focusing a little bit more on joy and happiness and trust, those are the things that, kind of sparked in that conversation. So I don't know if you recall that, or that's something you took to heart from that meeting, or what do you remember?
I remember a lot. And I remember that meeting was so important because I needed to, so I had all these good feelings about you. And remember, I didn't have good feelings about anything, right? So at the time I was so ready to be done and so not savable in so many ways, and just so checked out. And I was, from that very first conversation, I was very open, to your point, and very direct about it, because at that point I felt like I had nothing to lose. Like, this is it. Like, don't waste your time with me. And then you did. And I couldn't understand it at the time. I was like, why is he trying? But it wasn't like you were overtly trying. It was from this place of care about me as a person, not about saving my job, not about because you wanted me on your team to do this project, not because of any of that. It was, I was getting this sense that you actually were hearing me and seeing me. And that was something that I haven't experienced a lot in my life, and certainly not in my professional life. And so I was caught off guard by it. And I remember even telling Greg and friends, I'm like, I don't know about this guy. Like, he's different. I don't know why he's taking this time with me. I don't know why he cares. And I didn't want to believe it, because I'd been shown that so little, especially professionally. So when we met in person that time in Boston, it was so important to me to get a feeling for you, because I'm all about my gut. Like, my gut tells me what to do. I'm all about those feelings. I'm very squishy in that way. And I had to know. It's like, so that's what it was. It was almost like an interview of like, okay, is this guy,
who was interviewing who? Who was interviewing
right? Who, exactly. Right? It's like, is this guy authentic? Is he genuine? He says a lot of the right things, but is it for the right reasons? Like, is it because of care for me, or is it just because, he needs this person in this role on his team? And within minutes, I knew that you were authentic, and because it just oozes out of you. If you have not been told that, or if you don't know that, you're just authenticity and genuine kindness and care just oozes out of you. So I was immediately at ease, and you just started asking me questions. And I've told you a million times, like, that's your gift. And one of the things that just annoys me too, but it's amazing in an annoying way. You just ask questions, and you never let me just fall back on an excuse or on an answer that was maybe not the root of what you were trying to get to at the question, or what you were trying to probe in me for an answer. And so you would just kind of keep asking. So I got, peeling back the layers of these areas of frustration, of these different things that I had. So it came to the nugget where I couldn't, like my back was against the wall. There were no more layers. Like it was at its most raw. And I was like, this is it. This is my problem. This is where I am. And very quickly it kind of went from that, okay, we're talking about work things, to now there's more of this personal element that is affecting this work thing. So how can we start to unpack some of that too? And it really just turned into this amazing journey. And yeah, I didn't want to do self-help stuff. I thought it was silly. I thought it was all, people just who couldn't handle their own stuff, or people who were just trying to sell a magic potion or things of that nature. And you were never any of that. Like it was this authentic set of questions and suggestions for me to go follow. And actually, it's because, I'm big about dates. Today is actually 7 years ago that I sat on Memorial Day. So it was Memorial Day in 2016, when I had just left you in Boston. I went and bought the Speed of Trust in the airport on the way home from Boston. And I sat from literally like 7 a.m. till 10 p.m. And I prepared this document called Working on Me, and I still refer to it to this day. And I read the book. I read Speed of Trust. I read another book. I think you'd recommended The Happiness Advantage to me at that point too. So I started reading that one. And then I was also doing this Working on Me. And really that was at your suggestion, because as I was trying to figure out my professional stuff, you were saying to me, well, what do you want? Like, what is important to you? What are your values? What do you believe in? What do you want to put out there? It's like, I don't know. I've never thought about that. Like, I don't know, and you were asking me, what are your interests? What are you good at? I don't know. I can tell you all the things I'm terrible at, but I can't tell you the things I'm good at, And that's really what that document was. And like I said, I still refer to it. So it's all these, like all the things that I view as my strengths and things that I can bring and offer to a job, to the world, things, opportunities where I can work on them, perceived weaknesses, if using my terminology, opportunities using yours. And then what are my beliefs? What do I want? What am I looking to do with my life? What do I want to be a part of? What are my non-negotiables? What are things that in a job, even in a data job, which is what I do for a living, right? There's still complexity in what do you do for that job? What are you part of in the community that you're in at work? How are you relating to your leadership teams? How are they relating to their people? How are you relating to your colleagues? Is it a fostering positive culture, or is it something that's toxic? Is that important to me? And it turns out all of those things are super important to me, but I had never really thought about it until, you kind of spurred me on to do so.
Yeah, it seems like that has taken a life of its own, the way you just talked, about how that you made a lot of different connections at work and how you started to think about all those important things. Because I think we often talk about purpose and beliefs and trust. I love that you did the work to really kind of, pause and reflect, kind of investigate, inspect yourself. And I just wonder if people kind of say, I don't have time, or those are fluffy words. And I think those were things that we were probably talking about at the beginning. And if you don't really take it seriously, of course it's fluffy. Yet I know for certain when the words are taken seriously into heart, certainly connecting mind and heart, and maybe even your soul, it transforms. And that's something that I've seen happen in you over the last 7 or so years. And it all starts because you did the work, right? You did that Working on Me segment. You tied into Happiness Advantage, which I love that book and that TED Talk too, because it actually helped me realize that happiness is a platform for change. I also recognize, I think at the time, I recall some of the work from that is that Sean Aker said something like, to be successful at work is only about 25% of our intelligence, which is counter to what a lot of people think. It's about how we show up. It's 75% of how we show up and the actions we take. So in today's day and age, a lot of people are hiding. They're not stepping in, or maybe they're not welcomed by their manager. Maybe they're not cared for by people they work with, their colleagues. So it's so important, I think, in having a belief in each other. And you talked about beliefs. Like what are some things that you talk about and think about as you talk about beliefs? And maybe there are some from the beginning or before you even started this journey, maybe those changed. I don't know, but I'd love to know if there's any contrast or anything that's kind of developed over time.
Yeah. So it's really, for me, it's more about what do my beliefs, how do I want to put out what I believe to be goodness into the world? So my belief, I think my fundamental belief is in being good. And what does being good mean, right? That's a very broad and general statement, but it's how do I make others feel valued and heard and seen? How do I bring joy to other people? How do I serve people who have less privilege, who are in need, who are in crisis? How do I lift people up who maybe just need a little bit of a lift? Like, how do I bring this good into the world, and how do I foster that, and what boundaries do I need to set for myself to keep that good within me, right? Because I think that was part of my struggle before I met you, was really, I knew what I kind of wanted to do, and I was a good person and, whatever, but I didn't have good boundaries, and I didn't have a dedication to that goodness. So what do I mean by that, right? So you met me as you met me, right? A good person isn't going to curse at her new manager the first time she talks to him. A good person isn't going to, just like, annihilate the folks that have come before him in terms of frustration and anger. There's so many things that when you're in this place of toxicity, it changes you. And if you don't have that focus on what your purpose is or what you believe to be prevalent in what the world is that you want it to be, you lose focus of that, right? So how many times are you having a bad day and you're subsequently mean on the roadway, or you're mean, you're not kind to the cashier at the grocery store, or you're, maybe you're less patient with your children or your spouse or your parents, or all of these different things. So it's easy to do. We're all human. We're all going to do that. Yeah. But when you let kind of your beliefs go, and you just allow yourself to just get into these routines of toxicity and reaction rather than being intentional, like, I think you lose sight of what those beliefs can do for you and how they drive you to be in the world.
Yeah, I love how you just said the word reaction, because exactly what you said, when we know what we're trying to stand for, align to, you said good, the greater good, and some other things. And if we're not thinking about that, we're not pausing. We're actually not keeping a calm mind. And again, people hear this and they say, what do you mean a calm mind? It's like, no, stopping to think and feel and notice and figure out, hey, wait a minute. If I say this is going to disrupt everything. Or if I say this through inquiry, it's probably why I ask a lot of questions, because I might not always agree, or I'm trying to learn more. So I'll ask questions. And, to me, that's kind of a path of being open-minded and being curious, which is one of the steps in the book, as what you said, also something that was really critical about staying focused and disciplined. Like, what do you do to keep that? What have you done?
Oh, you have to work at it every day, right? So as I went through my transformation with you and really kind of bought into the fact that I needed help, right? So, and I think I don't want to let go of that either as a concept before I answer your question, right? I didn't want to admit I needed help when I met you, even though it was so clear to you. I think I didn't want to admit it, right? I've got I don't need you. I can take care of myself. I can move on with this. And you kind of broke down those walls for me to say, okay, I need help. So what does that help look like to me? What help am I willing to accept? Because I'm still I'm still me, right? Like I'm still all of the things that make me me. So how do I accept that help? And then how do I take that help and incorporate it into my life? And really that's the key to all of it. Because if you can't understand what will help you, you can't understand how to take it forward. Like you can be helped for a moment, you can be helped for a day, you can be helped for a month, but if you don't understand what it means to accept that help and then be able to help yourself with it, it's never going to last, right? So you say it all the time. It's within you. You always tell me I did all the hard work. I always want to give it to you because honestly, I am a product of so much of you and the inspiration and motivation and mentorship and guidance that you've given me. Yet I can't deny that I do the work every single day, right? So every day I focus on what is my purpose? What do I want to bring into this world? How do I want to be? What do I want my life to be? And that can be as simple as if I'm getting riled up about something. And again, I'm human. I am so far from perfect. Like there's nothing perfect about me. Yet I try, not for perfection. I just try to be better each day, or try to be good each day. Good for myself, good for my husband, good for my family. So what does that mean? It means I have to be okay. I need that sense of calm, that peace in my heart, that joy to spark my own light. If I want to be a light to others, and if I want to bring joy to other people, and if I want to serve other people, I can't do it if my own light isn't on.
Yeah.
And I did do it for a long time, and it exhausted me. It drained me. It created this very unhealthy person inside of a seemingly happy person, right? So every single day, I am mindful of happiness, seeing WGs. I see them all the time, everywhere, every day. I sent you one before this podcast that I found on a banana. I see him everywhere. And that is, Greg referred to it once, and I loved it as my happiness reset button. And I love that because it's true. It's like, because every time I see him, wherever, if it's outside, if it's dust ball as I'm cleaning, if it's wherever it may be, it makes me pause and it makes me smile. And that pause and smile is so intentional, and it's so grounding from wherever you are. It's like, okay, here it is. I've seen this. If I'm still open to it, if I can still see it, then even if I'm all riled up about something, I'm still here. And, I do that I go for Jeep drives because that's my peace. I go to the beach because that's my happy place. I go out in my garden because now I'm a butterfly gardener and I find my peace there. I go out with Greg. I reach out to friends, these different things that we do that keep me lit and that help keep me solid for the day, for the week, for the year ahead. And, we've kind of touched on where I've been this last year. But without those tools, without that dedication, without 6 years prior to the last year of what my life has been, I would not have been, I think, as successful. I would not be smiling and sitting here, certainly in front of you, wanting to do this podcast today, given where we've been, without that toolbox, without doing all of those things and making it a habit and making it a routine to always check in with myself, to check in with the world, to make sure I'm being authentic, to make sure I'm not straying off of the life I want to have for myself. It's not for anybody else. It's like, I want to be happy. I don't want to be this stressed out, crazy, worried, anxious person. I want to be genuinely happy. And then I want to present that out.
There's so much there that the listeners are probably saying, wait a minute, what is a WG, first of all? And I love the fact that you call it your happiness reset. And it's one of those things that you're putting in the front of your mind, right? You're actively looking for it and it's available. I'm with you. I find these one-eyed smiles, these WGs that are out in the world everywhere. And for folks that are following along, it's a big segment in the book. It's a part of the logo, the icon of this show, right? It's cool to think about too, what you said about we are imperfect. We're perfectly imperfect. And just like this smile, this one-eyed smile, each one that's found is imperfect, right? It reminds us all that we're unique and there's so much joy to be had if we're willing to actually, as you said, have a happiness reset and calm down and take a look at what's going on in the world. And it's a beautiful thing. And I love the fact that you've seen hundreds, probably thousands at this point, it seems like. And I love that there's other listeners that are also sharing and people are sharing directly with you. And you've shared some of those as well, which I think is fascinating. I think it's truly amazing. And again, you've put your focus there. And I think if other folks put focus on happiness, be it this one-eyed smile or other things, other people have shared with me, like, hey, if I see a red cardinal or I see a penny or a feather, all these other things remind them of people they've lost, or it reminds them that the world has their back, right? We're not alone. Because I do recall when we met, you felt like you weren't worthy of joy. You felt like you were lacking trust. And I feel like this is also giving you a kind of a space to say, no, I am worthy of this stuff. I am worthy of this like anybody else. But it's so important for folks to understand, like, nobody's perfect. And I think sometimes, as you mentioned earlier, we have this shell that we present to the world, and we need to unmask. We need to take that shell away, and we need to really be our authentic selves for us to really shine. And exactly what you said is beautiful. I think it's fascinating. And you're giving that out to the world. You're sharing that authentically now without that shell. I think you are guarded at times, yet I think the way you're sharing is much different. I think one of the important things I want to reiterate too is that level of focus that you have to do every day, because I want to go back to that for a second, because we did some challenges at the beginning. I was, quote unquote, I was the mentor, you were the mentee type of thing. And we did some challenges together. There were 30-day challenges. And that was really the start of what is a feature in the Live Your Possible book, which is the intentional practice action. There's over 100 of those in the book, as you know. But for the listeners, there are over 100 actions you could take that's a part of your day that could help you connect back into your authentic self or become somebody else, but to actually realign and reconnect back into you, to being you. And that's what you did. And I think that was one of the wonderful things about that, that connection, is we learned how to actually step in and take those daily actions. Then we started to build more trust, more belief, right? You started to see these WGs, you started to see more joy, even when there was dark days and dark moments like you've shared. So I don't know if you recall any of those challenges.
Yeah, so I will never forget the first one. And so that would be now 7 years ago, as of August 1st of this year. It will be 7 years. And so I had told you in the various talks that we'd had about a little bit about my life and my upbringing, and my childhood wasn't awesome. A lot of folks, unfortunately, are similar to me in that way, that, there's imperfection in our parents, there's imperfection in our lives. I definitely had some pretty big challenges along my path. And I just told you, I said, I'd really love to talk about that. And I'd really love to tell people, this is where I was, and you can come out of it, right? Like, you can get better. It doesn't have to define you. Whatever has happened to you in your past, in your current situation, what will happen to you, it doesn't have to define you. And that was just something that was always in me. And I do have a gift for words, whether it's I talk too much or I write too much or any of that, but I am definitely very wordy. And I'd always loved to write a book. I've loved to write. And I'd always said, I'll do it someday. And so that was one of the things you pressed me on was, why someday? Why can't today be the day? And then that morning of August 1st, you sent me a video and you said, hey, look, you could become an author in 30 days. If you write every day for 30 days, you can become an author. I was like, all right, I'm one who doesn't back down from a challenge. So, and I think you probably knew that about me at the time. So I was like, yeah, I can do that. I'll do it. And then I think my answer to you was, okay, then what are you going to do? And you wrote back and you said, I'll exercise every day. And again, because I'm an overachiever and can't ever, just back off the challenge, I said, okay, I'll do that too. So August 1st, here I am. So just a couple of months after having met you and starting on my journey, we were doing this first 30-day challenge together. And I did it. I wrote every single day for 30 days. Probably the hardest set of things that I've ever written in my life, which was this book that someday I'll do something with it. But for right now, it's been a gift that has given to me more times than I could ever express. So I did end up finishing the book, not in 1 month. I did finish it a couple of months after, but I did write at least 1,500 words or something every day. And I did work out every day. And I will tell you, I should have done the numbers before we got on this call. I'm somewhere, 22,000 something. I've only taken off 2 weeks. I took off 7 days when my mom passed last June. And I took off 7 days when Greg was in the hospital a couple of months ago. Other than that, I've worked out every single day for.
That's incredible. You said 2,200?
It's something 22, 2,300, something in that area. Yep. And it's been amazing. Like that's been a journey in and of itself, right? Because that commitment, so talk about holding commitments to yourself, like that commitment to myself has gotten me off that couch more than you could ever imagine. Because I sit there and I'm like, well, why do I not want to work out today? Just because I'm tired? Like, am I going to let that be why I don't do it? And so it gets me moving. And I've lost a ton of weight. Like I've kept off 60 pounds since I met you. I'm healthy. I'm happy. I'm mobile, all of these things. So I have my bad hip. I have all of these things, but the gift of that, both physically and mentally, which maybe even mentally is even more of the gift, because it did inspire that confidence. It did let me know I can do things. It did make me feel worthy of your pride when you told me you were proud of me about having done it, and kind of your celebration of that with me, Greg's pride in me in having done it. My mom at the time, like all of those things that I have, struggled a lot with that feeling worthy and stuff. And I will just talk quickly about the book. So, because I do want whoever listens to this to hear this part about it. So I wrote this book, and it's not like, a murder mystery whodunit. Like it's the story of my life. And the story of my life, unfortunately, contains some pretty tough things. Some things that I've spent my entire life feeling very shamed about. And, shame is such a powerful feeling, and just full of secrecy and just degrading you of your worth and your value and feeling like you're worth anything because you carry this great shame. And Brene Brown does a lot of great, she has a ton of great quotes about shame. And I've listened to some of her talks too. And here I am writing this book. And at the end of it, through another series of challenges, I knew you were going to read this book. And now this book was full of things that I had never shared with a soul. Like Greg knew about the big ticket items that were in there, but not the details, right? Because I was very good about keeping details and keeping emotion out of it. And so now here I am writing this book with the certainty that my boss, you, this guy that I just met, for all intents and purposes, you're going to read this, and you're going to read these things as my boss, as my friend, as my mentor, that are things that have kept me down my whole life, right? Like things that just really were terrible. And the gift you didn't know you were giving me at the time and inspiring me to write that was freeing me of that shame, was freeing me of that burden of having to hold this secrecy of it. Because the moment I put words into it, it became less scary to me. It became less burdensome. And then the moment I shared it, now I may have been a little nauseous, if you recall, the night that I hit send and emailed you that book. But it was also one of the most liberating feelings I've ever had, because I was like, this is it. It doesn't get worse than this. Like, here it is. And he's going to read it. And I'm going to have to look at him in a meeting, after he reads this, and we're going to still work together. And he's going to have to do my performance reviews and sign off on things. And here he is. And I did it. And it was just this really kind of revolutionary moment for me in doing that. So it wasn't just the challenge itself and the fact that I rose to that. It was what the challenges were that we did together, especially early on, that I think really changed, because your challenges started to evolve into Ignite Happy too, right? So we kind of challenged each other with big things, not just little things, but big, scary things. And we both rose to those challenges incredibly.
Yeah. I mean, that's the key message, is that, the commitment was there, then each followed through. And I think there was an element of belief in each other and that level of trust. I mean, at that point, you sent me that book, and how could I not read it? I mean, that would have just kind of blown another door wide open of someone you can't trust. And so at the time, I didn't know what was in the book. And then after reading it, I said, oh, wow, that would have been awful if I didn't read the book. And there's a couple of things here. One is regarding this, like the mentor-mentee relationship. Like anybody that has a mentor relationship, it's not a one-way relationship. It's a two-way. It's really mentee to mentee. I'm trying to encourage people to stop thinking they're mentors, because we all can learn things. Like I learned a ton by taking these challenges, learned from you about what you were learning, and you'd share and I would share back. I had more belief in the fact that I was even committing to myself to do the challenges, right? So I grew stronger on the beliefs, and I could see you change. I really saw you change quite a bit. I was a front row seat to what was going on, and it was transformative. And so I started to believe, like, hey, you know what? This Ignite Happy stuff, it's real. And that was the spark of my own writing. You know, you wrote this book, and that was kind of a race to who's going to publish first. And you know, that was fun. And it got to this amazing place where, gosh, the book's out now. This podcast is here. There's so much opportunity out in the world about how people can work together, human to human, and about showing care and being there for each other. And that's the key point with all that, in my opinion. And then kind of taking this forward too, about you've gone through, not only from what you wrote in the book you said this last year was even harder than that. How did you get through it? And how could you touch some of the things that you've practiced over the years to help you get through it? I know that you said the WG is one of the big elements. What are the things that helped you get through it? Because I think it's so important for folks to understand that you're, like you said, you've been working at this, and it put you in a place to get through it, I suppose. But I'd love to hear how you would describe it and what you would say.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. So last June, my mother, who I was very close to and also had a very complicated relationship with in many ways from childhood to adulthood, she unexpectedly passed away in June of last year. And when you met me, that was part of what I was so wound up about, was worry about her. She had a host of health issues. She had an abusive husband, just many different things. And so I've spent the majority of my life worrying about her and just going through scenarios of what's going to happen and what could happen and how is it going to happen. And I'll tell you that I found her. She wasn't quite gone when I found her, but the day before, and nothing prepared me for it. None of the worry, none of the anxiety I had, none of the days of joy, years of joy I stole from myself, none of it prepared me for when it actually happened. And that 24-hour period between finding her and losing her is by far the worst time of my life. It felt so dark and so inescapable and so smothering. And yet I knew I didn't want to stay there. And I think that's to answer your question about what brought me out and what tools did I use. What I recognized when I first started working with you was I was in this place that I didn't want to be in. And I was sad and depressed and angry and frustrated and all of these negative emotions, and very few of the positive ones in a genuine way. And really over the 6 years up until that point that I've been working on myself and working with you and really focused on the fact that life is a gift and that life is celebratory, and that I'm grateful for every breath and I'm grateful for every moment, even if it's the last one, I'm grateful for it. And as I sat there in this darkness, I still knew I wanted to find the light again. And I knew it might not be today. I knew it might not be tomorrow. I knew I might only find flashes of light in the beginning. But I knew that I wanted to find it, and I knew it was there. I knew the darkness wasn't inescapable, which is maybe a different way of saying I knew I could get better. I knew that this was not permanent, and I didn't want it to be permanent. I knew it could be permanent if I chose that, but I knew I could choose to not have it be permanent too. And I mean, the days, and because I've shared a lot of the emotion and pain and kind of terror of it. So, I mean, it's been such a difficult, at times feeling powerless, at times feeling desperate, at times just feeling, overwhelmed. Yet I knew I had to make the choice to come out of it. And so I did, right? Like over time, I took the 7 days off working out. I could have stopped, right? I could have just said the streak is done. I'm done. But I said, no, that's a commitment I made to myself. My mom was so proud of me for what I did. And I'm like, no, this is my step back to normalcy. These are my guardrails. I'm going to go back to this as soon as I'm ready, because I need that for me. The grief for my mom will always be here, but I need something for me right now. And so that was it. It started with baby steps. And at the time, I didn't even feel like I could get off the couch. I mean, I didn't even have the energy days to even take a shower. Like I was just in this depressive, terrible state. But I said, no, I need this for me. This will be what helps to pull me out. I kept Live Your Possible next to me. I kept a copy that I'd given my mom that she had started to read before she passed. I kept it in her house up until we just sold it last week. I kept that there. So when I would go through the trauma of going to her house, I purposefully kept that bright pink happy cover looking at me so I could look over that and say, okay, no, I've got happy, I've got this, I can do this, and so still kind of reeling from that. 2 months ago, Greg started feeling some weird health things going on. And fast forward to now, he is 5.5 weeks post-op from an emergency quadruple bypass. So we're very grateful that we found it before something terrible happened. But that terrible thing was looming. And we knew it was looming about we suspected it was looming a couple of weeks before the surgery. We knew it was looming about a week. And there's never been terror because he's my person. As a matter of fact, every nurse he had, every doctor he had, every single person I connect that took care of him in the hospital, I would say to them, he is my person. You work on a lot of people. You see a lot of people every day. I need you to know how important this man is to me. He is my everything. So as you work on him, as you operate on him today, as you take care of him, you need to understand how special this human being is. And it was really such a terrifying experience, right? And thinking of my mom and how my mom would have been because she loved Greg, and not, feeling the loss of her so much. And now we're selling our house, which is traumatic, and all of these things kind of coinciding. And I don't think I would have made it. I mean, honestly, I'm still going to go to therapy. I know I still have things to unpack, but I just knew the whole time I'm going to be okay. And for Greg, he was such an inspiration, as you know, he was so positive and just optimistic. And that helped keep me positive and optimistic. And then my positivity helped keep him positive. And really, it was just about gratitude. We were grateful to have the opportunity to fix it. We were grateful to have the opportunity to have the love story we've had. Just this focus on gratitude, this focus on being better. And last story I'll share, because when we were in the doctor's office and about to get the bad news that we already knew, we already suspected, we already knew that he had failed his stress test, and we were just waiting for the doctor to come in and speak to us. I look up and I see this artwork on the wall. And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. And I walk up to it, and it's a picture that I could have taken. I've taken a similar picture of a one-eyed smile of WG inside of I think they're Buckeyed Susans in front of these little flowers. They look like sunflowers. And there's the exact same picture I've taken in my life, like a very similar type picture with a WG right in the middle. I mean, here's this flower. I've never been in this doctor's office before. I've never seen this before. I don't know this man. I'm in this terrible state of knowing that my person is is having this critical health issue. And I see it. You've got to be kidding me right now. And just before that, my mom had sent a sign to us in the room where he had done the stress test, that she sent me a sign that she was with the doctor, and that let me know it was okay. And so even as I'm in this turmoil of this, and it was urgent, right? Everything was very emergent at that time. Everything's urgent. Everything is right now. We got to do this right now. We got to do this right now. And it's chaotic. And I was just like, okay, one thing at a time, and focus on it being good. Now, there's every chance it could have not been good, right? And I would still like to believe that I still, in those moments, held on to it. And I didn't steal joy from any moment that we had up until he went into surgery. And I haven't stolen joy any moment that he's been out of surgery. So I mean, Greg made a joke. Well, it's not a joke, but he kind of jokingly said to me, this is what you've been training for, when I was saying, oh my gosh, I don't know how I can do all of this. And he said, this is what you've been training for, kind of did like a little boxing thing. And I was like, you're right. This is what I've been training for. And there he is over there, just healthy and happy. And we're about to start a new chapter of our lives together. So if there's ever been any test of, because a lot of things with self-help, I think, are transitory too, right? They're, like we talked about in the beginning, they're only as effective as you make them. They're only as effective as when you continue to focus on them. And that's true with anything, right? Like any disciplined activity, it's only as good as your habitual and ritual of keeping it healthy. And I think the fact that I've had all of this time now to create this very fundamental and very now reflexive, rather than reactive personality, it's a reflex. Like I'm geared to, okay, find the happy spot, get to a place of gratitude, feel your feelings, go through it. It's terrible. You're human, have all of those bad feelings, but come back and bring yourself back.
I'm sorry you've gone through all that. I mean, just the experiences have been difficult, and you've seen some dark times. You've seen moments where you just probably can't believe this is happening, and yeah, like you said, you've limited how far you were going to let it take you, because you're right, it could put you in a tough state. And I do appreciate that you're going to continue to have those conversations with other folks. I think it's important. At the same time, I do think having positivity, Greg, you're a gentle warrior. You work through having this surgery, and I think there's something important to that about keeping, a level of optimism, hope, looking for the signs, because I definitely believe there's signs out there waiting to be seen and noticed. As your mom was there for you, you found that WG with that flower. We'll put a picture on here so people could see it. I think that'd be fun. I think it's something you've been doing. I think it's giving you a piece to do other things. I know when you left Mass Mutual, you started to pursue other things, in particular, an area where I think you probably would say you might never have done before, with Little Smiles. And it's a place where you're giving back. And I think you're doing some amazing work there. And I think it's incredible about what that program represents and what you're doing there. If you don't mind sharing what that is and how that's helped you as well.
Oh, Little Smiles has been absolutely an incredible journey. And you're right. I wouldn't have done it had I not focused on what those beliefs were. How did I want to put something into the world? What did I want to be and put out into the world as myself? And so really that culminated in, I wanted to give back in some way. And I didn't know what that was. And I kind of floundered about it. And as we do, right, we don't prioritize things. So we don't do them. And so I thought about it and put it on the back burner and just really didn't ever make it something that had to happen. And then as I did our work together and I really started to look at my life, I'm a Shriners kid. I had hip surgeries as a kid. So I grew up, 2 summers I spent in the Shriners Hospital. So I intimately know what that life is like for those kids. Having had some childhood trauma myself, I kind of know what that kind of situation is as well. And I really just said, I need, and without being a mom, right? I have all this maternal instinct, and my niece and nephews get a lot of that, and my cats. But I really had so much of this that I needed to give somewhere. And my brother-in-law, Dave, knew that I was looking for something. And he said, hey, I heard about this charity on the radio, Little Smiles, maybe check it out. And I checked it out instantly. Instantly, I was hooked, because this charity does amazing things every day. I mean, their whole thing is to bring smiles to children who need them. I mean, talk about the connection, Ignite Happy, my journey, living my possible, all of these things. And when I read that, I was like, oh my goodness, I know how important it was as a Shriners kid, being in the hospital. There were kids that I met on that journey who had lived in the hospital sometimes their whole lives, right? And so you have these children who don't know normalcy. They don't know what just a regular day of being a child is, either due to illness or some sort of unfortunate home situation. And so the whole mission of Little Smiles is to bring smiles and joy to kids when they need it the most. It's there's almost nothing in this world I could get behind more than that. And I went in. I was like, this is it. And as my first volunteer opportunity, I was hooked. And I actually didn't think I could ever work with the kids, because a lot of what we do is fundraising for the programs that we do with our children. A lot of the volunteers, we don't work with the kids, because oftentimes the kids are sick, especially during COVID. It was very limited to all of that. And I actually didn't think I could do it. I didn't know because I'm very emotional, I just didn't know if I was strong enough to witness what these children are going through without becoming emotional. And I wouldn't have wanted to put that on them. And then I did it. And it was the most rewarding experience of my life with these kids who had cancer, and just doing arts and crafts with them and singing Disney songs and having just this amazing moment where they were normal. And they did have just pure childhood joy, regardless of the fact that they were losing their hair or going to chemo tomorrow, whatever the situation was. And it lifted me up so high. And yeah, I went to my Jeep afterwards and I cried for 15 minutes before I drove home. But in the moment, it was so powerful. And now I look at these kids today, because now I've been volunteering with Little Smiles for years. And a lot of them are in remission. Not all of our stories are positive, but a lot of them are. And you see these kids and they're so hopeful and they're so grateful and they're so optimistic, and all of these things that we lose as adults, these kids who have nothing, who are in these terrible circumstances, and they have all of it. They're grateful for every little thing. You serve them ice cream. It's the best ice cream they've ever had. You're doing arts and crafts with them. They're having the best day of their lives. It's this pure joy. And to witness these kids who need that joy so much go through it, it is the most amazing thing I do with my time. And I absolutely love my service to Little Smiles. And I encourage, especially as we get older and, maybe those who have kids, your kids are growing older and you maybe have more time that you didn't have, find something. It doesn't have to be with kids. It can be with whatever you want. Maybe for some people it's pets. Maybe for some people it's the elderly. Like, find that place in you that sparks you and that makes you want to help people and bring out the best in other people. Because I promise you, it will give you more than anything you ever give. Anything you give, you'll get back tenfold.
It sounds like it's firing you up. It also sounds like it's again, it's slowing you down to see what you appreciate, what you're grateful for, to see that some people have only a few days and certain things are going to be cherished. And I think it's a great message for all of us to really take the time. I know we all say, hey, yeah, we're going to do that. And we do that when other folks pass or we go through some of the struggles like you've mentioned. Like we really slow down. And I imagine going forward, you're not going to stop slowing down to notice the beauty in the world, the things that make you have those happiness resets. Every time you see Greg smile at you, the things that, we kind of take for granted, and it's important for us to slow down and really see that and cherish it and love it and really let people know that too, which is really powerful. And I love that you're giving back, because you're right. When we give back, it does reward us. It does. And I think if some people say it's selfish, like, no, don't expect it yet. We should accept it when it does come back our way, and it should fire us up like it has you, which is phenomenal. So I just have a couple more questions. One is a quick one. What would you say is your superpower?
Oh, that's a great question. What would I say my superpower is? I would say it is in lifting up others when I see something special in them. I think that I have a knack for looking for the best in people. And I think that I'm very vocal about expressing that to people authentically, right? I'm never going to tell anybody they're amazing if they're not. But I do think my superpower is in intuitively knowing when folks may need to pick me up and being very, very happy to give it to them.
Yeah, that's a gift to be able to see that. I think a lot of folks don't know maybe the awesomeness that they might have, or, what they are giving out to the world, because maybe there's a lack of confidence, self-doubt, don't feel worthy. I mean, there's certain things that I've struggled with. I'm sure a lot of other people have struggled with over time, right? And you give so much out to the world, right? You have a big heart. You're giving with Little Smiles. You're there with Greg and your sister. You're there with so many people in the world. So I want to say thank you for everything you're doing. And I hope you feel the love and the support back to you, especially through these tough times. Before we sign off, are there any final words or maybe words that really you want to spark someone else to start their journey, to know that they can also get through tough times, or maybe just say, wait a minute, I could do better?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much I could say there, but quickly to kind of summarize it, it's believe in yourself, right? So like we just talked about, sometimes it takes someone else to say it to us. Sometimes it just takes ourselves to believe in ourselves and to know that we can do things. And as insurmountable as something may seem, you don't have to tackle it all at once. You really can just have faith in yourself. It's not even, you can have faith in anything that you want to have. You have to include yourself in that, because it is within you to do what you need to do. And I didn't believe it. You had to tell me, you said I can do anything. And because I didn't feel worthy, and I had all of that self-doubt, and I had all of that. And again, I don't think people outside would have thought that of me. And I think that that's a theme with a lot of people, is we outwardly play that we're very confident that we can do anything, that we've got this or that. And then inside, it's a different story. And I think that it's hard for some people to ask for help, like me. It's hard for some people to accept help. It's hard for people to even admit to themselves that they need help. And, especially folks that put on this mask of strength and confidence and all of these things. We all need to be told we can do something. We all need to believe that we can do it. And I think that no matter what path you take, how you want to get there, what you choose to do, have faith that you deserve happiness and have faith that you can make it happen. And I think, I can't thank you enough, Darrin, for giving me that faith in myself, for making me proud to be me, which is something that is wild for me to ever say. But I'm proud to be who I am. And I love myself. I love the people around me. I love you. I love the life I lead. And I celebrate it. And I think we can all get there. Again, no one is perfect, and you don't have to be perfect every day. You just have to try. You have to try your best to find what will spark you and go get it. Even for 5 minutes a day, start with 5 minutes and then get to 10 next month and then 15 the next month. Wherever you have to start, just find it and go be happy.
Yeah. And know that happiness doesn't have to be constant. Yeah. We can, like you've said, we know we can get back to that place because it's never far away. And everything you said is great. I'm looking forward to read your book. So I know you have some new chapters you need to add based on the last few years and tying it all together. Because I do think it would inspire folks. You are an inspiration. You've been vulnerable. You've been openly sharing, your journey with us. And I know folks can relate to it. And I know people are saying, oh my God, she went through so much. We all admire you and what you've done and what you're doing and how you show up and how you contribute to the world, how you give back and how you really open yourself up to make an impact. And it's rewarding you back. And I only hope there's only good and positive things for the rest of the time. So I am certainly honored that you've been on a show. I'm grateful that, we're friends. I've learned a lot from you, and, I will continue, and I'm a believer, and I appreciate you being on the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all you do to put goodness in the world. And the world needs more of you, and I'm glad you're doing it.
Thank you, Donna, for joining us on the show. You are such an inspiration for coping and excelling through life's ups and downs. Let's all send her a message today of love and support for all the good she's doing in the world, and consider practicing some of the ideas coming out of today's show. For example, let's stop to be grateful for the little things. I know we say we do, but let's really do it. Hey, take notice of ourselves, our strengths, and our weaknesses to connect back into what impacts we want to make in the world. One of the most extraordinary beliefs Donna shared is to constantly do good for others and good deeds and make things better in the world. What is your greater calling? Think about it and start believing you can make an impact. You will see when you pause and take intentional actions, you'll light up the world around you too. Stay focused on your journey and practice specific actions that will help you live out your calling and what you would like to see more out in the world, like happiness and joy from what Donna's practicing. And now she's putting it back out in the world every single day. Even consider following the footsteps that Donna took by following the path of possibilities in my book, Live Your Possible. Now, her little smile story was awesome about giving back to kids in need of a smile and joy. It makes me think I must do more. I know it will fire me up. It should fire you up. What can you give back on? What mission can you follow? Let's do something together. Now, in honor of the show, try to see the good in others intentionally and help to bring the best out in everyone we meet. Be your happy, authentic self. Serve others, and you will live your possible that was once unimaginable.
That's all for today's episode. If you liked the show, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Live Your Possible dares to unlock your fullest potential and become an avenue for others to do the same. Join the community by visiting ignitehappy.com. It's time to discover endless possibilities with equal opportunity for all. See you again next week for more insights on how you can live your possible.